As you know, on the 28th of November, so that's about 10 days ago, 12 days ago, the Executive Council has taken the decision to revise the island decree that holds the tariffs for the different types of use of the protected marine park. That is the culmination of a debate or a discussion that has been going on for almost a year now. So let me take you back to the beginning, at least the beginning as far as we see it. When I arrived as new director last year, second half of last year, my colleagues quickly convinced me of the fact that the way that the Stinapa budget is set up now, and the way that we get, I don't know what is this? Yeah, so that the way that the Stinapa budget is set up, and more specifically the income, the revenue that Stinapa has at its disposal to take care of our core duties going forward had become critically low, and that it was absolutely necessary to find ways to raise our revenue. Why? Because since 2010, the total population of Bonaire has risen from 12,000 to 19. There's more building at the coast, there's more projects at the coast, there's more dive schools, there's more divers, there's more non-divers. The use of the marine park has risen substantially over the last couple of years. And what that brings, quite simply put, is that our core duty of managing the marine park with sufficient funds has become increasingly under pressure in the last couple of years. So what we did at the beginning of 2018 in January was we opened a conversation with the Executive Council. Remember, Stinapa is not part of the government. We do not receive tax funds. We do not receive funds in any structural way for managing the marine park, other than the individual user fee that is being paid to fund our work. Since 1979, the Marine Park of Bonaire, and I believe it was really even the first marine park in the Caribbean, the way that the marine park is funded has been set up in a particular way to avoid costs or excessive costs to the population of the island, to the government of the island, to the people that pay taxes on this island in Rincon, in North Salinas, in Terra Cora, and all the other places, to avoid those costs of what is a marine park of world standards, of world quality standard. The mechanism of funding for the marine park was one where the tourist, the visitor, pays for the use of the marine park. This avoids unreasonable costs for Bonaireans, and it ensures that people that live on the island can make use and continue to make use of their own natural beauty and their own natural resources without having to pay for that in excessive ways. The only exception being, obviously, the dive tag until now. That system, we believe, is important to safeguard. It is important to ensure that a marine park that attracts visitors from all over the world that pay thousands of dollars to come and spend a holiday here contribute in a fair and balanced way to the upkeep of the park. That is the mechanism, and that is what we stand behind firmly. So when we had to make a choice about how are we going to go about trying to create more revenue, it became instantly clear that there are only two avenues for us. One is to, within the existing framework of the law, ensure full compliance in all sectors, not just the divers, but also swimmers, hotels, resorts, windsurfers, kite surfers, everybody that makes use of the marine park. And secondly, to take a good and honest look at the rate of the fee as it stands right now. As you know, the individual tags cost still until this year $10 if you're not a diver, $25 if you are a diver. And those costs or those tags are valid for a calendar year. Now, Those fees haven't been raised, they haven't been augmented for over 13 years. So 13 years we're at the same level of funding from the individual user tag. And that individual user tag is 70–80% of the budget of Stinapa. That means that we cannot joke around with it. That means that I cannot take risks with it. That means that I cannot go to the Bonairean community or to a cash-strapped government and say, you have to start paying now because we cannot handle this anymore. The system that we have with user tax being paid by the visitors is internationally accepted. It is fair. Marine parks here in the region, if only the Galapagos, Ecuador is an example, there the fee is $100 for your one single stay. If you come back 2 months later, you have to pay $100 again. One of the better parks that I happen to know in Honduras asked for $60 per visit. So the amounts that we are charging in Bonaire until now, $10 and $25, are out of step with international norms for the quality that we have in our marine park here. We're selling our nature way too cheap. And the consequences of that have become extremely clear. There has been a boom in businesses in the marine park. There has been a boom in use of the marine park in all kinds of ways. Nobody is contributing to the upkeep of the park except the individual user that comes and pays for their tag. When I say that, it's also important to bear in mind that there's different types of tariffs and different types of fees that not just the individual user, but also hotels, dive operators and others need to pay per year for the use of the marine park. Unfortunately, that is a sector where we also see compliance at varying levels, if I can put it diplomatically. So we're faced with a situation where the commercial use of the park has risen drastically with its results, as we've seen that in Sorbonne, in Lac, certain dive sites that are very popular, certain snorkel sites that are very popular, Klein Bonaire. We see that with the growth of the population, more new houses have been built, more new areas have been constructed, which has led and is leading to deforestation. It is leading to more sediments in the marine park. And all these consequences we have been having to mitigate with the same type of income and the same type of budget. That for us was a reason to talk to the Executive Council and say, you have to do something about these tariffs. We also sat at the beginning, January and February, with the board of Kuro. As you know, Kuro is the Association of Dive Companies. And we have discussed this intention with them extensively at various occasions. There can be no surprise at all at the side of Kuro about this request from Stinapa. This is important to remember given the somewhat heated discussions that I've seen on the internet over the last couple of days. Secondly, in the last year, Stinapa has organized over 10 stakeholder meetings with all sectors that make use of the park, of the marine park, with the divers, with the surfers, with the kayakers, with everybody that we logically could think of that makes use of the marine park, we have invited in this very room, and we've talked about all the issues that we're facing, the threats that we're facing, the necessity of commercial enterprises to really start contributing to the upkeep of the park, and to really start levying the dive tag or the non-tag dive tag with categories of visitors and users that are less compliant than the dive sector is until now. So let me emphasize that from the side of Stinapa, we feel confident that we have done our utmost best to engage with all users in the marine park, that we've never made a secret of what our intentions and our goals were in this respect, fair contributions, adjustment of fees after 13 years of being frozen. We've also asked them for cooperation in many other fields. The agenda of Stinapa going forward, the Conservation Action Plan, as we've been drawing it up together with all sectors over the last couple of months, it never was a secret. We've always discussed it openly, and there is no reason for anybody to assume that we've done that in any other way. Just look up your own old articles. So one of the things that I wanted to emphasize today is that I feel slightly disheartened about some reactions that I've seen online by certain people in the dive sector. I think they're unfair. I think they're unfair to my people. I think they're unfair to our colleagues. And it's simply not true that they have not been involved. And I am not responsible for how Kuro talks to its own members. I am not responsible for how Kuro talks to the government. Stinapa is not the government. We've made a petition that we feel is fair, and we've shared that with all stakeholders. A couple of months have gone by, and as you know, the 28th of November, the Executive Council has signed a revised decree based in part on a letter that we sent out to the Executive Council early February 11th. And to be very clear, this letter was an invitation and a request for a conversation with the Executive Council, in which we proposed various measures. Amongst them, what do we do with cruise passengers? That quantity has risen as well. Is it fair to keep the exception in the law or not? It is our point of view, written down, 10 months, no secret to anybody, that that is not fair. And we've said such. We've also talked about having a tag that is at the same level in terms of pricing for non-divers and divers, because we find it very difficult to establish who does more damage or does less damage. It is not a fair measure anymore, and we have proposed to put those tags on the same level. Again, important to remember, Stinapa is not the government. We, on the 28th of November, just like anybody else, got a publicized amended decree. And when we started reading that decree, we saw what was accepted by the Executive Council from our series of proposals and which was not. And that, unfortunately, is how these type of developments work. We live in a democracy, not in anything else. It is the Island Council and the Executive Council that make the decisions about laws around here. Not us, not anybody else. We've made our requests. We feel that it was a fair request, and what we've gotten back was the augmentation, the rise in the individual user fees from 25 to 45 for divers, from 10 to 25 for non-divers. And as I've just explained, there are many more measures that are in the law, and there are many more fees that are in the law. We've asked for changes on some of them after consultation with the sectors. Some of those we got, some of them we didn't. And so I feel that when I see some of the remarks over the last couple of days directed at our colleagues, that maybe some of these comments should be directed elsewhere. We have elections coming up in March. We live in a democracy. Go talk to your politicians. Go talk to your parties. Ask them in this campaign period how they would want to go about cruise tourists after March. That is how it works in a democracy. Democracy is not shouting and screaming on Facebook and insulting my colleagues. Now, one of the issues that we're facing right now is that there is a just request, I believe, from the dive sector to be involved in how we are going to be implementing these changes. It is now law. There is a decree, and there's, I think, a just request from the dive sector that has historically been the sector that was most, let's say, compliant in terms of the dive tag, that is by and large responsible for bringing in together with us the biggest chunk of those tags, and to talk modernizations. As I've just tried to explain, we wanted, but we didn't get a system change. The system has remained the same. What has happened within the system is that 2 tariffs have been augmented. Individual user tax. So in as far as some have gotten the impression that this, for some reason, is an extra financial burden on the entrepreneurs, on the commercial users of the park, this is emphatically not true. Nothing changes in the administration. Nothing changes in the way they need to work with these fees. The simple fact that the individual user tag has gone from 25 to 45 and the non-diver tag from 10 to 25 doesn't mean that those companies now have to pay more money in some way. They have never done that. They have helped Stinapa collect the individual user fee. And we're happy and we're grateful about that, and we're looking forward to continued good cooperation. Second thing is that the dive sector has complained that the passengers, cruise ship passengers, still are exempt of having to pay access to the marine park. To put it more strictly put, what the island decree on the marine park stipulates in Article 2.3, if I'm not mistaken, is that visitors to the island that can prove that they are on the island less than 24 hours do not have to pay for access to the marine park. I said island decree. I hope that with my previous explanation it is clear to everybody that a decree is set by the Executive Council. Not by the Island Council, that's an ordinance. The decree is Executive Council. And it's certainly not set by us. We're not the government. We've asked for these changes, they have not been approved. It's as simple as that. But that doesn't mean that our needs are not there. That doesn't mean that it's a fair argument to make that because the system has not changed, that because a certain exception has not been lifted from the law, that now all of a sudden magically the maintenance of the marine park has no problems anymore. It's just an unfair way of having a discussion with us. Our daily or our yearly budget is 1.5, 1.6, sometimes 1.7 million. We have 10 people working in the marine park. We have more or less 10 people working in the Washington Park directly, in the field, rangers and their colleagues. We have 3 biologists on staff that do critical biological research to make sure that our park management decisions are the right ones. We have a very small education department where every child in every group on every school, primary school, every year gets a couple of hours of education. There's no foundation on this island that can show the same type of output that Stinapa puts out there. For the limited funds that we have, with the limited resources and people that we have, and I find it an unfair argument when people dispute that. It is also unfair to say that our funding levels right now in the marine park are adequate. Everybody can see that they're not. What is more, before 28th of November, the people that are now criticizing agreed with that. Because those same people come to us and say, you need to patrol more, you need to surveil more, you need to put a permanent ranger on Klein Bonaire, you need to put a permanent ranger in Sorbonne, you need to put a ranger in the Mount Roost, you need to do that. Do more for us because Stinapa, you don't do enough. Those same people, after the 28th of November, are now doubting that it is necessary for us to up our revenue and provide better services. And I will not, and we will not, be pushed into a discussion by commercial entrepreneurs that for some reason or another, it is not the tourist that has to pay, but the fisherman from Terracora, the fisherman from North Salinha, or the Kunuqueiro from Rincon. This nature is being used by tourists from the outside. And that is a good thing. It delivers jobs, it delivers taxes. We're happy about it. But we will not be pushed into a corner where we have to charge Bonaireans for nature that is being used by tourists. And that is why we will keep firm to this position. We will keep firm to the decision that has now been made. We find it a fair amount of money, we find it a fair tariff, and it will go a long way to alleviating some of the urgent needs that not just us, but also our partners have identified for years already. Having said that, we are perfectly happy to sit down with Kuro once again, talk to Kuro once again, talk to every stakeholder once again, and together formulate an agenda that is much more sustainable, that is a positive change for the future, and that makes the mechanism and the funding mechanism for our parks to modernize that system. As you know, I'll give you a couple of examples. I came last year. Within Stinapa, outside of Stinapa, we have a discussion for years about an online tag sale system. For years. It has never come about. Now, we're at the moment, in a couple of months, we will be implementing it. For years, there has been a discussion about getting the taxes at the gate. So when people land at the airport or coming through the harbor, collect the taxes there. We are in favor of that system. My predecessors were not. Stinapa is in favor of that system, and we've already consistently said so. We are in favor of co-management where coral restoration, reforestation, and a couple of, let's say, the interventions for conservation that are urgently needed right now will be intensified. And we will be doing that together with ECHO. We will be doing that together with other partners on the island, as we have done that consistently over the years. We're not talking about getting $25 or $45 that goes to whatever, to our beautiful big office. I think you know Barcadera. We're talking about getting the funds that we urgently need to start managing or to up the level of quality of the management of the park and to make a serious effort to start conservation, because it's necessary for our own future. It is also necessary for the value of the park. Our two park managers are here, Abitu and Layo. And so maybe after this introduction, Layo and Abitu would like to maybe say a couple of things about the ambitions that we formulated in the Conservation Action Plan and that we are hoping to roll out going further.
You want to take questions?
You want to do that first? Sure. Sure. Yeah, that might be easy. Yeah, go ahead.
I think you mentioned that, good job, by the way, nice presentation. You mentioned that Kuro was upset, certain members of Kuro. Why is that? Were they misled? Conversations I've had with Kuro members feel that they were betrayed. Could you comment on that?
That would be highly surprising. We have engaged with Kuro over the last year intensively. And we've spoken to them about the need to raise our fees and our tariffs. And certainly the last meeting that I had with the Kuro board, with a couple of my colleagues present at Barcadera, I don't remember Kuro objecting to raising the tariffs. Kuro did suggest, and we were completely in agreement on that we should also move to getting the exemption for cruise tourists out of the way, that we need to move to a unified collection system where the administrative burden on the dive schools, and by the way, also on Stinapa, because let's not forget that it's not the dive schools only that collect these fees. We spend at least 8 or 9% of our costs for every tag on collecting that, administrating that. It is a nuisance to us just as much as it is a nuisance to the dive schools. So we have formulated a positive agenda. We don't believe that we have done anything that can upset Kuro in the sense that they were betrayed. I find that word very strange. Kuro has a very different position than Stinapa. Stinapa manages the marine park on behalf of the government. I'm not an interest organization. I'm not a business association. I don't have an interest here. I manage the park for different types of users. And I will talk to Kuro, and I will talk to everybody else, and I will exchange with them the arguments, and I will ally with them where possible. And again, I hope that we will be doing that in the future, but Kuro doesn't dictate to Stinapa what we do in our relationship with the government. Now, if they would have been surprised, and that if we would have had several meetings with them where we never mentioned tariffs, where we never mentioned the need for upping our revenue, maybe they would have had a point. But I challenge them to show me that.
Seems to be their issue now. The other thing is, does the full amount of the money collected go to Stinapa, as it did in the old days?
I beg your pardon?
Does the full amount of the dive tax to nature tax go to Stinapa, 100%?
Yeah, fully. Yeah. Yeah, sì.
Tu rispetto e pensa a una come del pagamento.
No, vai.
Perché è arrivato da bisogno
Sì.
lees hoy, troppo importante come siano di Bonaire, anche con il buon. Perché in vez di essere visto un poco ripetere una cosa che
Sí, no hay problema. ¿Sí? Después, no sé, sí, nós acabamos por para pergunta, depois nós tem laio com habito vai añadir algo, então depois nós podemos para entrevista um pouco mais detalhada de qualquer idioma, não tem problema.
Ora sì, di una forma con uno stura
Sì, no,
Sì, non tem problema, non tem problema. No, natural. But that gave me a little sort of chance to sort of think about George's question, which surprised me a little bit. But look, I don't think that we would be doing a good job as park managers if we would not be interacting fully with major stakeholders in that park. We just honestly believe that we have done that. And there has never been any question where we have let any doubt, not at the table with Kuro, not at the table of 10 stakeholder meetings that we've held throughout the year here in this room. If Kuro has a problem with how that discussion has gone or not gone, or that we somehow should have formed a front with them together, let me then ask Kuro this. Did Kuro formulate a proposal and send it in? I don't think so. Has Kuro ever invited me or any of us to one of their meetings? I don't think so. So at some point the question becomes, do we keep on talking and punta dede and talk to each other and not get anywhere? Or do we at some point start to make something happen? And I think that one of the things that one of the advantages that we have right now is that discussion about what is sustainable use of the marine park is alive. That we have the discussion now about what do the passengers of cruise ships contribute or not contribute. But I would like to push back against the perception that it is a zero-sum game, that it's because of the cruise ship passengers that now the park is going to hell and that they should be paying because otherwise it's not fair. That is a distortion of the truth. The passengers, cruise ship passengers, yes, they are putting more pressure on the parks, absolutely. But so do new inhabitants of the island. So do new companies and projects and hotels at the sea. It is a mix of pressures that have risen. And we favor and we believe in a different system. But we don't decide the system. We do appeal to the government when we see that within the system and within the tariffs that we have, we do not collect the revenue needed to minimally, at a level of quality that we believe is necessary for the conservation of our marine park, can do our job. Some people believe that we have 100 rangers. We have 8 rangers and a marine park manager and a chief ranger. And that's 30 kilometers. I mean, what is it, 20? Yeah, it's about 30 square kilometers of marine park. We have a 16 square kilometer terrestrial park. When Sargassum hit last year, in March, who did the work? Who picked up the bill? Was that the government? Was that Kuro? Who was that? So we're getting all kinds of extra work. We're getting all kinds of extra demands. If there's an oil spill, if there's a diver at Klein Bonaire, if there's whatever, everything around the coast and certainly within the limits of the marine park comes Stinapa's way. Now, I'm fine with having that discussion openly and transparently because my arguments are in order and I can show it. I'm not fine with having shouting matches via Facebook on a fact-free basis where people let out 30 years of frustrations. Because in 1875, that happened. That is just not the way I operate. It is not the way that I want to be talking to each other on this island. Sylvia.
Before the 28th of November in the law it was said that there was a cruise passenger fee. After the 28th it was gone out of this paper. What was the step that Stinapa took when they saw that it was no longer in the law?
You'll have to help me. As far as I know, that there's een eilandsbesluit onderwaterpark in artikel 2.3 wordt een uitzondering gemaakt voor bezoekers van minder dan 24 uur. En die staat er nog steeds in.
It's about the $10 user license for cruise ship passengers, correct?
No, look, there's two different things here. There's a day pass, $10. And there is the stipulation in the decree. Look, it's law, I'll keep it short. We have an ordinance, Island Council. We have decrees, Executive Council. And then you have annexes in which you stipulate where articles point to this type of fish you cannot catch, this type of fee you can. That is spelled out in annexes. The exception for cruise tourists is in the decree. It has always been in the decree, it has not been lifted from the decree. The day pass is based on the same Article 2, but on an, Article 2 lid 2 in plaats van 2 lid 3, which is stipulated in Annex 3 which type of fees you can levy from individual users. We have also seen that in the annex, the day pass stipulation, the $10 day pass, is not mentioned anymore in the annex. We've seen that 5 seconds after we got the decision because we were looking at that. What they did apparently was they merged the previous existing Annex 1 with the previous existing Annex 3. And they have merged a couple of those different articles in one. That doesn't mean, first of all, that the law doesn't still allow for day passes. We believe it does. Problem right now is that the annex doesn't stipulate an amount. So we have done what we I think should do in this particular case. We have picked up the phone to our partners in the bestuurskantoor. I said, would you care to explain what has happened here, because this doesn't appear completely consistent, and maybe they have a very good explanation for it and we'll wait for it. But again, whether it's about taxing cruise tourists or not, whether it's about having a day pass present or not, we have to try, and at least that's what I'm going to try and do, separate these different issues. I'm for a day pass. We're not against day pass. We've never asked for elimination of a day pass. We've never asked to keep cruise tourists exempt. On the contrary, we've asked for the elimination of that exception. We've been studying the law from the same moment as everybody else got it on the 28th of November, and we've identified that particular issue, and we've identified a few other issues that we're now talking to the government about to see how was this meant.
So you're talking to the government already?
Of course, I do that daily, Sylvia, it's our work.
But so far...
So why did they eliminate it?
I have no idea. There's a Department of Legal Affairs, Juridische Administratieve Zaken, where we speak to when it comes to... So a law, the drafting of laws, a bill goes through the thematic department, the directorate that deals with the issue of the content of the issue, and then ultimately it lands with the Department of Legal Affairs that draws up the final decree and ordinance for the Executive Council, and they've made a decision. We believe that there's a couple of issues in there that we would also like to get more clarification on. But again, that is a wholly separate issue as far as we're concerned, from whether it is fair or not to have an individual entrance fee to the park that is still at the level of 2005, or that we should put it on a level that is in 2018 and that is useful now and that helps park management and that is in step and compliant with several parks in our immediate vicinity, and that is also in line with the willingness to pay research that I think under TCB a couple of years ago has happened, where people have indicated that they would be willing to pay to $60, $70, $80 per year. We're asking for $45. That's if you're here for 10 days, that's $4.50 a day. That's 2 beers at the snack, at the toko. While you've paid for 2,000 euros, you've come with your flight and your hotel and you're doing all your things here. Honestly, we do not believe that that is an unfair request from tourists that come and use the natural resources that belong to the Bonairean community, and that is our primary master and client, not anybody else.
I think it's the cruise ships that people are, the cruisers, that, that everyone is complaining about. They don't really think that the $45 is horrible. They think it's justified, but they feel like the cruise people should pay, or the cruise ships, because of their impact on the reef.
No,
Underwater landslides, the disposal of reef, etc.
No, and they find us on their side on this, and that is not new. We've been saying this for almost a year now. Hell, we had a royal visit where we've made this point during several moments of that visit, with Dutch journalist, Bonairean journalist Els Marie gave a speech. We never made any secret of what our position is on that. What people need to understand, and that is what I'm really asking everybody to sort of think before they utter opinions. We do not make the law. We ask and we get or not get. We've made this ask. We've made this request. Some were granted, some weren't. It's as simple as that. Does that mean that the fight is over? No. Does that mean that well, you know, let's go home and let's eliminate or let's annul this decree? No, because regardless of passengers and regardless of all kinds of groups that should be paying and are not compliant fully right now, the needs of park management are simply too high for the revenue that we're getting. So regardless of that principal discussion, there is a practical discussion. And that is that we are funded not by the Bonairean taxpayer, not by the government, but by the tourist. And that from that funding resource, we do not draw sufficient funds anymore to perform our basic task to the minimum quality that we believe we should deliver and that people have come to expect from us. It's as simple as that.
I have a funding.
Why you didn't choose to level a little bit, like start with 25 each and then in half a year go a little higher? Like what everybody would expect to happen, then instead of suddenly pushing this up?
Again, Sylvia, the presumption of your question is that I have anything to say about that.
Well,
we have proposed a stepwise increment.
Was there a proposal saying that we have to
Yes,
do
there
this
was.
gradually, and why
Yes, there was.
it was not taken?
I have no idea. Take it up with the Executive Council. It's not my problem.
And you can still, is there space to still do that, or are you going to go for January 1st?
Look,
Right.
we will tomorrow speak to the dive sector. We've invited them tomorrow. I think so far we have about 30 applicants for this meeting of tomorrow. We are willing to consider implementation in a form and in a way that does justice to the surprise that we got on both sides of the equation. Because 28th of November was the first time that we saw it, just like anybody else. And we understand that we're in the middle of high season. We understand that people have already made bookings. We understand that people have certain expectations, whether it's the dive shop themselves or the tourist that is visiting us. And I understand that a dive operator doesn't want to talk to clients too much that are surprised that instead of the 25 that they were thinking of, they now have to pay 45. So we're willing to enter into that discussion. But let me preempt your follow-up question. What we are not willing to consider is to suspend the effective working of the decree in the sense that the new tariffs legally and formally enter into force as of January 1st. Because I do not serve dive schools. I serve the marine park and I serve this community. It's as simple as that.
You talked about funding, that you get 78% of your funding from tax.
Yeah.
The other part of the funding, I assume, comes from like the Rural Nature Funds, other rural concerned environmental organizations. What are you doing to increase the grants that they give to Stinapa? Or will this hurt your efforts to get outside grants because suddenly you're very well funded?
That's a good strategic question. To amplify on that a little bit, it's 70–80% of our income, give or take 5%. The remainder of that consists of 2–3 elements that vary year by year. One is more or less consistent. It is the $72,000 that we get annually from the trust fund, the DCNA trust fund that is in place for the 6 park management organizations on the island, was filled by the Ministry of the Interior until 2014-15. It's now not being filled anymore, but it's a trust fund, it's a revolving fund, so from the yield of that fund, we make contributions to the different marine park organizations. The other is we get $60,000, if I'm not mistaken, but that's a decision year by year, so it's not a structural contribution to perform educational activities. So that's not the junior rangers, it's not the festivals that we do outside with youngsters. This is for the education that we do in the classes in the primary school.
Provides that money?
That is OLB, public entity. Yeah. And then the remainder comes from the US Fishery and Wildlife Service. It comes from WWF. It comes from partners that have an interest in funding activities in either the conservation area or the marine area, oceans area, or in our topographical area. But those usually are project subsidies, as we call them, so they're relatively small amounts for a specific goal. For instance, the development of the Conservation Action Plan in August and September was partially funded by the WWF because they want to have better planning instruments in place, and they want to see that with a lot of the park organizations in the Caribbean. Having said that, the strategic question now is, what is the status of a marine park? It's a national park under Dutch law, don't forget. It has an official designation under Dutch law as a national park. But contrary to national parks in continental Netherlands, there is no contribution, there's no structural funding from the national government to the national park of Bonaire. I mean, I know there's a lot of sort of people that think they know and they don't. We don't get it. It's simple as that. The Hague delivers to us €0, zero. And so one of the efforts that we're undertaking for a year now is to start talking to The Hague and to the different departments in The Hague to see what type of funding we can get for the national park here in Bonaire, which is, in all humility, the best national park of the entire Netherlands. And certainly on the global, certainly on the global level, coral reef-wise, it's the most important one. How we can get to a point where The Hague starts co-funding that park. This is why it was very good for us that Princess Beatrix paid us a visit, because that brings attention, that brings civil servants, that brings, in January, we'll have another minister visiting us. So we're in that conversation. But that's a slow conversation. As you know, the political dynamics on the Dutch side make that funding for the Caribbean Netherlands is not usually on the top of their mind. Yeah. So yes, we're to answer your question, we're exploring different avenues.
What's the exact amount? What's the exact amount that Stinapa needs Mr. Duarte, after everybody, to cover itself by yearly, on a yearly basis? The exact amount. In millions. The exact amount that you need to cover all the things that you're doing as Stinapa, Bonaire National Marine Park, all the other things.
Well, it's difficult to say it like that because there is research being done into what do marine parks in our region and certainly in the Caribbean islands need in terms of their minimal, let's say, staffing and budgets to manage their parks to a minimum level of standard of quality. That's one approach. I've seen those reports and they are highly suggestive and highly subjective. The other approach is that you sit with your own team, that you sit with the stakeholders in society, and that together you come up with a planning, that you together come up with an agenda for the coming years. And that's what we've done in the Conservation Action Plan, open standards that we did in August and September for weeks in a row. And where all organizations, or representatives rather, from all organizations were invited and participated. And we're now, for the budget 2019, translating that Conservation Action Plan into concrete actions and into concrete budgets. It's very difficult for me to say that finally now, because again, we were also surprised by the decision on the 28th of November. So we are now scrambling to see, okay, what is a fair amount to budget? What can we budget? We want to be cautious there. We want to be careful. And how does that affect our agenda for coming year? If I would have to make a wild guess, right now we're at the 1.7, 1.8 million mark. We would probably try to start budgeting for next year for maybe 2.5, maybe 2.6, depending on what type of implementation trajectory we can come up with after having spoken to the dive sector. Because let me emphasize again, I wanted to sound very clear about words like betrayal, you didn't talk to us, you didn't this and that. I wanted to be very clear that we talked to them, but that is different than that they're not my parliament. They don't decide what we do, and they don't decide what we do for the government. The government is my partner. And in the sector and in the marine park, we work together as much as we can, and I hope that we will continue that. And frankly, until this weekend, I thought that we did. And then...
Why do you think the dive industry is so angry?
You know, Sylvia, I've seen all kinds of theories. I've seen physical threats coming from the dive sector to my person on Facebook. So, you know, I have no idea, Sylvia.
I think it was just 2 people on Facebook.
I don't care, Sylvia. It's not a way that you talk to each other. And I find it highly inappropriate, highly disrespectful, and it is highly disrespectful mostly to my colleagues.
I heard it. I heard it. I didn't see it because I block these people. So.
No, look, I've heard different theories, and I've heard different people explain where their pain is. If I leave out all the insinuations that Stinapa buys brand new cars with it, or that the director earns $200,000, or that we are in league with some politicians, all this BS that has been coming up over the last days and that has infinitely angered me. If I just skip all that aside and I just look at content, I see actually 3 points that I agree with and where I believe we should be working together. This decision has come very late. They're in the high season. It is busy for them, just as it's busy for us. We've asked for this decision in January, February. I mean, it's not my fault that this decision has been taken this late. And we did talk about increments, so not do it in one. And all these things were already in our proposal at the beginning of February. Let me phrase it differently. Because we understand that they now also are surprised and have to sort of implement this within 6 weeks, let's say, we are willing to open the conversation with Kuro and see if we can make that implementation period that we usually have, you know that better than I do, until like mid-January, you can still use your old tag of the last year. We're willing to extend that period. But pay attention, that costs me, not cost me money, that costs us revenue. We're giving them that. We're talking to them about having an implementation that works for our partners in the marine park sector. And I would be very happy if at least one of them would recognize that. Because I don't know how many dive schools would tell you that. You know, don't pay me for 2 months. Don't help to pay for 2 months. You know, I don't care. How many dive schools had 13 years ago the same rates and the same fees and the same tariffs for their dive courses? I've had the same fees for 13 years. So, but it's a good point. It is too soon, too fast, and it's a surprise to everybody. So we're willing to work with them on an implementational period. The second thing that we fully agree with is cruise passengers, who should be taxed in just the same way as everybody else. We agree on that. There's no point of discussion there. There never was. And the third thing I believe is that, yes, let's then now sit together and see, look, the Marine Park of Bonaire was one of the first in the region. Now, it's been around since '79, with 40 years. Next year we have our celebration. Maybe it's fair to say that in some ways, where we had the edge in the past, maybe now we're losing that edge a little bit. Visitor preferences are changing. The type of services that people expect are changing. The quality that people ask are changing. We are perfectly willing to talk to Kuro and anybody else about in which ways you can enhance the quality of the services in the parks. And that is exactly where that money is meant for. It's not meant for anything else. We don't have debts to solve. We don't have people to pay that don't do anything. We get that revenue to manage the parks. That's what it's for. So we're perfectly happy to sit down and talk to them about how do we do that. Rec parks. I've seen all kinds of ideas coming from the sector. We didn't have 100,000 to put a rec in the water. Maybe now we can contribute a little bit and have a couple of them also contribute. Maybe we can now vastly expand coral restoration projects. Maybe we can now vastly expand mangrove reforestation. Maybe we can now vastly expand the reforestation in the parks and on Klein Bonaire. Maybe that is a good thing for everybody. And maybe some people in the dive sector should also understand what our different roles are on this island. They are a partner to me, and I'm happy and I welcome our cooperation. But they do not dictate what we do. The government dictates that through the law, and the people of Bonaire dictate that through the law and elections, not anybody else. Other questions? Sì, por favor. Si no, mica una laio cu abito a palabra, pa sopra.
No, it's okay, thank you. I think that the time is right to raise those tariffs and fee, especially for Washington Park. What does it mean for Washington Park? Washington Park does also have a little bit of our marine park, because of marine park the scope is all around the island, and in the Washington Park we do have also part of the marine park, and we do receive people that are going to the Washington Park for swimming, for diving, and for snorkeling. So the same tariffs that they are now going to pay starting on the 1st of January for diving, when they go to the Washington Park with their dive tag, they will enter for free. They have to show their tag, they have to show their ID and the paper that they have paid and that the tag is from them, so they can go to the park and make use of our marine park within the park. Secondly, the topic about the cruise ships, we were thinking how can we charge those tourists from the cruise ship other than for the marine park, and because the fees from the Washington Park at the entrance is a little bit different organized than the fee from the marine park. So we came up with a good idea, because right now we do receive a lot of tourists from the cruise ships. They go to the Washington Park, and till today, they don't pay nothing. They go into the park, they go visit the museum, they go visit, make use of our toilets. They walk around, they can climb the Casicunda hill, they can go the Lagadishi walking trail, but till now they don't pay nothing. So we came up with the idea to charge every cruise ship tourist that go to the Washington Park and visit the visitor center, because mostly they will visit the visitor center because they don't have too much hour to drive through, so they will walk in and they will stay and enjoy our visitor center. And right now we are making and developing and making our visitor center more beautiful to receive more visitors. So right now they are going to pay $3 to visit our visitor center, so we can make some money from them also to put back in maintenance and reforestation and everything that our museum, we have to rebuild our museum. We have a lot of new ideas to do also into the park regarding reforestation, regarding more sites of interest. So it's very important to charge them that $3. And beside the $3, the Salvo asked about the money that Stinapa are going to earn. It's going back to Stinapa for 100%. That's correctly, it's going to Stinapa. It's not going only to the marine park for 100%. So Washington Park is also the other part, the rest of part that are going to benefit from the raising of those tariffs and those fees. We have a long list that we want to realize in 2019 and beyond 2019. We want to increase our events. Last time we came with the new events, the Real Days of Bonaire, it's very good, a big success. So there's more that we can offer at the Washington Park to not only the tourists, not only the visitor from other countries, but also for the local people. We are trying to attract more local people also to the park, and to do that, we need money. Everything is money. One other example, we are thinking of building a salt museum at Slagbij, both indoor museum and open museum. But to realize that, we have money, because Boca Slagbij was the first harbor of the island, together with Playa Funche, the first salt lake of the island. So we want to bring life back to Slagbij, so when the visitor drive through Slagbij, they can see how it was before 1996. So in that period. So we want to do a lot of things. Last time, the 20th of October, we had a very emotional activity at the light tower. That 64 years ago, lightning struck to the light tower, and one worker died, carbonized into the light tower. And we want to make a big event next year. We want to build a mirador so people can go there and sit and realize how it was back then, and see the beauty of our nature, both terrestrial and the sea, because we have the sea. We have the other, on the other hand, we have the hills, we have the landscape. So we have to build a very long stairs to the top of the hill. So everything costs money. And when you go to other country on vacation and you want to visit all kind of parks, not only nature, but also all kind of parks, there's no park charging below $50. I went to the States, I went to South America. Every park is charging 50 and above. Some parks are charging for $150. So I don't think it's a problem to raise those fees, because it's like 13 years that we have the same fee, and at the Washington Park the same. Local, we will remain the local rate for our local people. It will remain $3 at the entrance of the Washington Park, whether you want to stay at the visitor center or you want to drive through the park. But for the tourists, like I said, especially for the cruise ship, if you want to visit and use the toilet and enjoy all the activity at the entrance, at the main gate, at the visitor center, you have to pay for it. There's no country in the world that you have a visitor center from a national park that you can walk in for nothing. Everywhere, if you want to use a toilet, you have to pay $1.50. So we don't have only a toilet at the visitor center. We have a lot of things to offer, and the list will be more. So I am totally okay with the new fees, and for the Washington Park, we want, together with ECHO, we want to work, expand the exclosure, the reforestation. We want to close the fence, especially at the south on the Labra, between Slagbij and Labra, because of the goat eradication. So I'm talking to the people that want to build that fence, a good solid fence, for nearly $90,000 to build, because it's not easy to build, because you are in the, so it's and everything is money. And if we don't close that area, we will keep have a problem with those goats, because they are coming from Brazil, they're coming from Playa France, they're coming from Labra. So we are keeping the goats out on this side, and they will go in on the other side. So it's about time to raise those tariffs and fees, so we can do all kind of good things for the Washington Park.
Does the executive council have to rule on the $3 fee? Or
No, legally, the law sees to what is called in the law in natuurpark, nature park. That's a legal definition. The only natuurpark on the island is currently the marine park. So while Worcesterslagbij is a natural park, it's a reserve, but it is not designated as such under the law, which means that we can set our own tariffs. And so yes, and I'm very glad for that addition. We will be charging cruise tourists. We will be charging them at the gate where we can organize that ourselves, and that is in the Worcesterslagbij Park.
So we
Maybe
step.
fine,
Yes,
you
we.
don't have to make a change.
Yeah, so that's a good one. No, we have started with 3, but maybe in the future when everything is developing and becoming more expensive to maintain, maybe over a few years it will become 5. So, okay.
So people that come to the entry and don't have any tag, how much they're going to pay to enter?
They are going to pay the $25 for the nature fee if they want to use the marine park, and they have to pay the $20 fee if they want to make the use of the Jurassic Park. So those 2 fees together, it's the same as the 45
So 25
and 20. If you want to go
and the
to
dive is 45?
the dive tag of 45, and they will enter free if you have your tag and your ID and the receipt.
Okay, so there's 20, 25,
And 45.
And the kids?
The kids till 12 is for free. That remains the same.
Visitors.
That, yes. For local and for tourists, that will remain the same. So till 12 you can enter for free, and adults have to pay. If you want to go hike the Brandaris, for instance, you are not going to snorkel, swim or dive. You have to pay the $20. Yeah.
As a tourist,
As a tourist, and as a local, the $3. So
that remains
residents
unchanged.
and no residents. There's only 2 categories that we are going to apply. So residents, $3 drive-through and walk-in, and non-residents, $3 walk-in at the visitor center, $20 drive-through. Thank you.
Nice job.
Thank you.
¿Alguien
No,
más?
¿La primera respuesta a Pavimento? Sí.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody again. My name is William Martin. I'm the acting manager of the Marine Park. Now, the raising of the nature fee became like my director said, November 28th. We didn't expect it to come in that day, but we got a surprise, and now we have to work with it. Now, like you mentioned, I don't want to go back over the detail he mentioned, but when Sylvia asked about the why we didn't do it in step, but that was one of his director, our request to the government to make it in steps, but it didn't happen. So, and we get it in one time in November 28th, all the way up. So now we have to work with it. Now, what are we going to do with the extra money, but with the money that we get? We have a lot to do. I have here our conservation action plan. It's over here, it's a lot of things to do. So like the director said, we have to put everything in everything that's in the plan, what we have made with our stakeholder. We sit for 2 weeks in this room over here and the room upstairs with the stakeholder. We all came to the same idea. What do we have to do to make the use of the marine park sustainable? It's in here. They have for that. Now we have to put it now in money. And before, we didn't have to put ranger or climb on there. Now we do have to put ranger or climb on there. Now we do have to put ranger in Lock Bay, Sorbonne. Okay, we have more. We do have more people live on the island now, so that means there is more action going on. We have, it's the marine park is 2,700 hectares, and we have 6 rangers, so they all have to cover the 2,700 hectare of marine park. So the reason why we have to put ranger or Klein Bonaire ranger in Sorbonne Lac Bay is because there is more pressure on those two areas. That's the reason why we have to put ranger over there to make sure everything is okay.
You cannot ask an entry fee for Klein Bonaire like you do in the park?
Not right
Well,
now.
it's
Not
not.
right now.
It's not separately defined in law.
No. Well, yeah. When I think everybody was in the room at Plaza when they came up with the Bonaire Blue destination. It was a big thing that everybody said we have to charge the cruise ship more. That was just a say, but nobody have to do any action on that. And today we're still saying that they're still paying the same fee. Okay. Now there is a lot of things that we have to do with our action plan to come to a like directors say, to a high level of maintenance and also management in our marine park.